If the Koch brothers had never decided to get into politics, they had just been working on cancer research and living the lives of rich oil billionaires, what do you think would be different about American politics today?
I don't think the libertarian movement would be anywhere near as strong as it is in American politics. They are the primary funders of libertarianism in America. And I just think that they have been tremendously influential in spreading that ideology. And I think, you might be able to look at spending on elections and say it often is a waste of money. And you can look at, say, for instance, Tom Steyer spent a lot of money in recent elections and has a pretty poor record of wins in the various elections. But that's not where I see the influence of the Kochs particularly. It's partly in elections, but that's really a minor part of what they do. They've subsidized an entire ideology and a kind of a conveyor belt that moves far-right extreme ideas into the mainstream. And they've done it in a really systemic way for 40 years. And they have endless amounts of money to do it. They're each worth something like, the last I saw was $60 billion is about the fortune of each David Koch and Charles Koch, which effectively means they can spend it as much as they want on anything. And they've really seeded this movement. And it's the ideology, moving that ideology forward, I think, that has made the huge difference. And in a way, and I look at it as kind of like, we've been talking in the last year since Kellyanne Conway came up with the idea of alternative facts. But long before she gave a name to it, they were creating alternative facts through academia, through think tanks, through grassroots groups that are actually astroturf, that look like they're citizens movements, that are pushing for policies, and they're using data that's false on things like climate change. And it's confused the whole debate in the country. So I think they've had a huge effect.
And how much of what has separated them from other rich men and women who have wanted to influence politics is just the sheer fact of their patience, where so many donors are fickle?
Well, I think they've been very smart to take the long view, which you could say is patience. I mean, the thing is, Charles Koch is a true believer. This isn't just a put-on thing with him. He actually, this is a heartfelt crusade for him. So he's been working at it for 40 years because it's what he really wants, and he has an endless amount of money to get it. So I think taking the long view really helps. It's not just election by election. It's more of a plan to take over every state legislature. And if it takes 20 years to do it, fine, they'll be there for it. If you have to pour the money in 2010 so that you can gerrymander those districts when the Republican majorities take over in a census year, do it. I always find it really important that both Charles Koch and David Koch are graduates of MIT with multiple graduate degrees in engineering, and they look at American politics like engineers. They're very bright, and they look at things as systems. And they felt that this country didn't believe what they believed in 1980 when Charles Koch got David Koch to run on the Libertarian ticket as vice president. They lost horribly. They spent a ton of money and got 1% of the vote. And the country was nowhere near believing anything they believed. And they kind of looked at the whole landscape and thought, okay, how do we win? It's not going to be by running for office. We're going to have to change the way the whole country thinks. And they've been at it ever since.
When I listen to the way liberals talk about Charles and David Koch, it often sounds like they're sort of the Dr. Evils of politics, but not in a funny way. They've become
cartoon characters, and you can make them. You can, and they're not.
What do liberals get wrong about the Kochs?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that's a really big mistake is to look at them as merely greedy and in it for themselves, because they probably wouldn't have been able to be successful if people just thought they were greedy old guys that are trying to make more money for themselves. And they are partly that because this ideology makes them richer by the second. But they wouldn't be able to convince people to come along with them if it was just to make themselves rich. What they've been able to do is paint a picture of an ideology that has appealed to many, many people, which is they've defined the absence of government as liberty. And they're saying what we're going to give you is liberty to run your life your own way, get the government off your back. They've made the government the enemy. They've made regulations the enemy of a strong economy. And they've created a very positive vision that a lot of people have bought into. And unless liberals understand that there's a positive vision there that you're going to have to go to war with and try to paint a counter-positive vision of what liberty means. For instance, liberals might be able to argue liberty actually means the ability for everybody of every income group to fulfill their potential, to get education, not to be impoverished by health care, to be able to have their children reach their career dreams, something like that. It's got to be positive. It's not, you can't really fight the Kochs just with something negative, is what I think.